All right, folks. So one thing I have noticed lately, in particular, has been an observation that certain people at the range seem to have difficulties zeroing optics. So I'm going to use a very simple red dot that I have here. This little Sig Sauer Romeo 5 El Cheapo entry-level red dot to kind of illustrate how I zero red dots or optics in general, and kind of break down the process and how I do that, and how it's really quite simple if you know what you're doing. So let's start out with the basic process about why you want to zero your optics. So the reason why you want to zero your optics and why your zero can vary across all different platforms. So if you take this same optic here that's zeroed for one gun does not mean it's zeroed for another, even if they are, say, I don't know, 16-inch barrel length AR, that you put it on the exact same spot, but not necessarily going to be zeroed and hit at the same point. So you want to zero your optics every single time that you move it around to a different platform. So, because you want your shots to hit where you're aiming, of course. So the way I like to do it is I have typically a target like this. You don't have to use this exact one, but some kind of grid target. You don't have to have a grid target in order to zero an optic, but it certainly helps with getting finer adjustments to know where things need to be as far as the up, down, left, right, elevation, windage, right? So the one I showed you there happens to have a 1-inch square grid, which is very, very handy because most optics are MOA adjustments, which is roughly 1 inch. 1 MOA being 1 inch at 100 yards. So a lot of red dots typically have adjustment knobs, either a 1/2 MOA or a 1/4 MOA adjustments, either way for each click that you turn it. So let's say, for instance, you are sitting at a very reasonable zeroing distance, which is for most people going to be 25 yards. Do not start zeroing at 100 yards. Shame on you if you do. Start at 25 yards, and if things are even reasonably close to being close to each other, that is where your gun is actually pointing versus where the optic is, you should get reasonably somewhere on the paper on a target this large at 25 yards. So let's say you do your for grouping, to figure out where you're at, you want to do at least 3 shots, right? Typically you want if you have the ammunition available, you want to do 5-shot groups, but 3 will work just fine. So you're at 25 yards, you're sitting on your bench, you're taking your time, you're really trying your best to have the most consistent trigger pulls that you can get, and you get 3 shots, let's say right here in this area, but you are aiming right here. So what do you need to do? You need to take your optic and you need to move it, well, you need to move the reticle, I should say, over to the right and down. So how do you do that? You should, for starters, read your manual for your optic. Now, I know it's a novel idea, and a lot of people don't do that, but you really should read the manual on your optic so you know which way is up and down, which way is left and right, if for some reason it is not marked on your optic, or you can't quite figure out which way it means either. So, and also the adjustment size as well, because some of them are 1/2 MOA, some of them 1/4 MOA, some are even full MOA for like little tiny micro pistol dots. Anyways, so let's assume this one here is a 1/4 MOA adjustment, and as you can see, it has 2 exposed knobs here that I've taken the covers off of. This is for up down, and that is for left right. So, and they are appropriately marked as well. I don't know if that'll focus there, but it has a letter U with an arrow pointing towards it. What that means is if you are looking at the optic, like let's say that's your vision right there, you're looking at it. If you turn it to counterclockwise, that will move your point of impact up. If you turn it clockwise, the other way, if you turn it clockwise, that'll move your point of impact down. So you would take this one, as I've just shown here, let's say you're hitting right up here, you would crank that all the way down until it came to about basically in line to your center point. Now, when you're zeroing it, you want to take one dimension at a time usually. So you don't want to adjust left, you don't, no, I was pointing this one, sorry. You don't want to adjust right and down at the same time. You want to do one dimension at a time. So only do left, or getting this backwards, I'm looking at the camera. You only want to do right, get that adjusted first, and then you do the down, because that will eliminate a lot of possibility for error on your part, so you're not what they call chasing the zero. So I will mark here 3 spots that you have hit. And let's say you make the proper adjustments, you really crank that thing all the way over to the right, and now you take another 3 shots to where you think you're at, all right? So I'm gonna mark 1, 2, and 3. Now, this is your first group right over here, and this is your second one right there. Now you have 3 over here. Now you see it's not quite in line with where you want to be on the center. So you adjust it some more, and you just keep adjusting until you finally get your little 3-shot, really tight group right there, and now it is centered with your center aiming point. Now you can do the other dimension. You can go down, and you keep going down, and you get a group, I don't know, right here. Cool. Well, now you still need to keep going, and you keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going. Oh no, you overshot it, and now you're below your point of impact, or where you want your point of impact to be. Then you move it up. Pretty simple. Until finally you get a nice little group, and let's say just for kickers, you do a 5-shot group, and you get it all in the center right there. And now your red dot matches to where you should be wanting to hit, which is where your red dot is, right? Great, awesome. Now, what you want to do, because you're not quite done yet, you want to confirm your zero. And what you do is, if you really want nice results, you take another 5-shot group. I usually do 2 or 3 more 5-shot groups, and you confirm your zero by moving it to different points on the target and doing 5 here, 5 here, and then 5 here, just to confirm and make sure everything is as it should be. Now, let's say you've done all that and you've absolutely just destroyed the center of those little secondary targets after you've confirmed your zero. Well, great. Now you're zeroed for 25 yards. That does not mean you are zeroed for 100. And despite all of the science and the the ballistics charts and everything that say that, like, at certain distances your zeros should be exactly the same. Some people say that if you zero for 25, you should be zeroed for 100. If you zero for 50 yards, you should be zeroed for 200 with certain calibers, rifles, etc. In theory, that works, yes, but you always want to confirm and see for yourself. So what do? You take yet another target like this, and you go all the way out to 100 yards or whatever distance that you want your optic to be zeroed at. And you really sit down, take your time with the same ammunition that you used to zero the optic the first time. Same ammo, same rifle. Bench it up as much as you can. Get it, that thing as secure as possible. Do your best possible effort to get the best trigger pulls, most consistent trigger pulls that you possibly can. Really put your effort into it. So you take it out of that distance. Let's say for this example, you go out to 100 yards with your 16-inch AR. And let's just say you start, you put your dot right there, and you try as hard as you can to just keep it right in there. And you start noticing that maybe you're hitting a little bit off target. You're hitting maybe over here, you're hitting over here, hitting up here. You're hitting somewhere that's not where your dot is. That can tell you a number of things, depending on weather conditions and wind and things like that, and whether or not your ability as a shooter as well. Your zero may be off for that distance. It could also just be you, but it could also be the zero for your optic, and you need to confirm that for yourself before you well and truly say this optic is zeroed for that distance. So with red dots at 100 yards and further distances, it's a little bit harder to do that because you don't have the same assuredness that it's not just you, it's the optic because of the magnification levels. It's a little bit harder to shoot red dots at distance. Anybody can tell you that. So But trying to eliminate all those variables as much as you possibly and humanly can, you can kind of narrow down and say, hey, maybe this isn't zeroed for 100, because now you start having your impacts hitting somewhere else other than where you're aiming. So you make your necessary adjustments again, repeat the process again as best you can, take a 5-shot group, say at a different target, a different location, and confirm and see for yourself as best you can to see if it really is just you, or if it is the optic, or if environmental conditions like wind and that kind of thing. Maybe there's a mirage down range, because, man, living in Arizona, I can definitely tell you mirages definitely do affect long-range accuracy, because your target is just shimmering and doing this the whole time, and I'm just looking at it like, man. So, with that, absolutely try to make sure that the optic is in fact zeroed for the distance you want it to be zeroed at, with the ammunition of your choice that you're going to run with that rifle in that with that optic at that distance. There's a lot of factors that go into that, but it's very important that you do that, because I've seen so many instances where all people do is they'll take their rifle, they'll go out to 25 yards, 50 yards maybe, they're zero their optic for there and just call it good, call it a day. But then they go out to like shooting competition, or they go hunting or something that they have to go longer range, they need that precision, and all of a sudden they can't hit anything, and their shots are all over the place. It's because they didn't take the time to confirm their zero at the distance that they were going to be shooting at. It's very, very important that you do that. And, there's a lot of things that say that shouldn't happen, that, your bullets should travel a certain way, or, if the optic is lined up just perfectly, it shouldn't matter. And, it shouldn't, but these things happen. There's inconsistencies with maybe the base is a little bit, off of a dimension or something, or the optic is weird, or there's so many factors that go into that. You really do need to confirm and see for yourself that your optic is in fact zeroed for that distance with that ammunition. Because I'll tell you right now, if you zero an optic for like ARs, if you zero for 55 grains and then you move down to a 77, you're going to see a big drop, definitely. But of course, if you zero your optic for 77s at 100 yards and then you go to a 55, naturally it's going to hit much higher. So be aware of the ammunition that you're using. Not all ammunition is made the same, especially if you go to used to be Walmart. You can't really buy stuff at Walmart anymore. But you're buying your bulk pack ammunition, and I don't know, maybe sometimes you get a 62 grain 5.56 load versus the 55s that you're normally used to shooting, and now it's going all over the place and you can't figure out why. Well, there you go. Also, even between different manufacturers of the same quote unquote load, like even if it is a 55 grain 223 Remington or 5.56 NATO load, different manufacturers load them a little bit differently from each other. So your zero, your point of impact can definitely change from your point of aim, especially if it's a different brand, different manufacturer, different load from what you originally zeroed your optic with. So very, very important to make sure you keep note of that in case you can't figure out why your optic is just not hitting where you set it. So with all that having been said, that is the very, very basic and very easy way that I zero my optics, red dots, and the kind of nuances that go into that, and really the good way to, at least is what's worked for me anyways, to ensure that your optic is in fact hitting where it needs to hit, where you want it to be hitting, and keeping into account not just the shooter ability, but environmental factors, ammo, optic, everything else, rifle. The rifle's inherent mechanical accuracy can factor into that as well. All these things taken together can affect your zero for your intended target, range, distance, etc. So take all that into account and really think about it, and try not to get frustrated and do what this particular individual at the range said. I'm gonna take this goddamn Trijicon ACOG piece of shit and I'm gonna throw it on the ground and it can't zero for nothing. But he started his zero at 100 yards with an M240 Bravo. So, yeah, can't help you there, dude. Probably got more money than sense, but what do I know? Anyway, just some tips for zeroing in your red dot. I hope that helps you guys out. So yeah, I'll probably do some more videos like this on how I do certain things, because it tends to help people and it's kind of second nature to me. So I don't really think about it very much, but a lot of people have been asking me these kinds of questions lately. How do I do things? So I figured I would share some very simple but potentially very helpful knowledge. So anyways, that's all I got to say about that, and yeah, hope it helps.